A registered sex offender goes viral when he's caught in the act sniffing a woman from behind.
But I definitely didn't expect him to do this. Like, what the actual
But officials say years after that incident, he's back at it again. This is Inside the Crime, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. Hey, by the way, there's a reason Law&Crime is the go-to spot for true crime content. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest personal injury law firm. They have more than 1,000 attorneys and have recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. And in Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it so easy to fight for what you deserve, you can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/insidethecrime. Click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. We're in California for this case, and the suspect in these crimes has now been dubbed as the butt sniffer, a man who's been arrested twice in 2 months for, you might have guessed it, sniffing women's butts, something that he's allegedly done repeatedly since 2021. In August of 2023, TikTok creator Michaela Witter went viral after she posted this video on social media.
It's day 20 of 100 days of solo dates, and today we're going to Barnes & Noble and getting Starbucks. Except I ended up being stalked and violated the entire time. So I get to Barnes & Noble and get my Starbucks. I'm super excited to look at books, but this is the area that it started. I was in this corner for a while and I noticed the guy was staring at me through that little hole, and I couldn't tell if I was being paranoid or if he was just reading a book and he just happened to be in that little corner. Anyways, it felt like anywhere I moved, he kept following me. So I recorded just in case he was trying to say anything or do anything to me. But I definitely didn't expect him to do this. Like, what the actual And the whole time I'm thinking I'm fine because he hasn't said anything or touched me or anything. But then you notice that he goes over and does the same thing to this girl. And he'll crouch down low and pretend like he's doing something and then smell? I don't know. And the whole time I'm wondering why he's always around me. But this was our interaction.
What are you doing?
I was so freaked out when I turned around and saw him literally under me, so freaking close to me. So I decided to tell the front desk.
He's a really creepy guy. He has like these red beads and he's like pretending like he's tying shoes and I think he's like smelling people. Maybe like around there. Oh, he's leaving. We'll let my manager know. Thank you.
And then I try to walk to my car as fast as possible because I don't want to run into him.
So I'm leaving now, but I just watched the video back because I was trying to figure out what he was doing so close to me, and it freaked, like, I'm so disgusted and I feel like really violated, even though he didn't touch me, but it just feels really gross and weird. And then I went up to the front to tell the lady because I didn't want him to do that to other people. And then as I was telling her, he was leaving. And so all she said that she could do was just tell the manager. I waited around a little bit because I didn't want to run into him. And I couldn't even focus. Like, I wanted to get a book, but then I was just, like, my anxiety was just, like, really bad. And, like, also I just felt, like, really grossed out. So I just left as soon as I could.
The man who was crouching behind her was later identified as 38-year-old Khalees Crowder. What's scary is Michaela told ABC7 Eyewitness News that since she posted the video, more women came forward with similar experiences from that exact same man. She told the outlet, "I'm glad I did catch it on camera because now so many people have come to me saying that they recognize the guy, that the same thing happened to them. At least his name is out there. His face is out there so people can be aware and cautious." Michaela posted her TikTok on August 8th of 2023. Less than a week later, police officers in Glendale, California announced they arrested a man believed to be peeping and prowling at a local home. Police said at the time, quote, "In the most recent incident, Crowder is accused of peeping into the occupied residence of a Glendale family. The family, including children, were at home at the time of the incident. Glendale police patrol officers were quickly dispatched, and the Detective Bureau continued their investigation this week." So about a week after allegedly sniffing behind Michaela, Khalees Crowder was charged with 1 count of loitering with intent to commit a crime. He was held on a $10,000 bail. Then the wife of former Lakers star Robert Horry took to Twitter saying that their family also came across Khalees Crowder. In a tweet Candace Horry wrote in response to Michaela's video, she said, quote, "This is so upsetting. This man stalked my teenage daughter at our home over 10 years ago. He went to jail only to come out and continue the same behavior. Thank you for putting the word out that he is back. He needs to be put away for good." Ultimately, that wouldn't happen in the 2023 incidents either. Khalees pleaded no contest to the peeping and prowling incidents, so he was ordered to spend 60 days in jail. Then he was later released. But he was back at it again this year. On July 22nd, officers responded to a Nordstrom rack in Burbank, California, after getting reports of an individual roaming through the women's department and sexually harassing a female customer. Once officers arrived, Khalees reportedly left the store, but he was tracked down to a nearby Walmart and taken into custody. Eventually, he was released. Then officers booked him again on August 20th for allegedly doing the exact same thing. The August incident reportedly took place at a Walgreens. Because of his repeated history, plus Khalees being a registered sex offender, this time around, he was held without bail. In September, Khalees was ordered to serve 135 days in the Los Angeles County Jail after admitting to violating his parole, meaning he could be out of jail right around the new year. I'm joined now by former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. Nima, thank you so much for joining me. And Nima, this case is disturbing in different ways and for a number of reasons too. We have two different incidents, one happening on July 22nd and another happening on August 20th, all of this year, but it's not too far away from each other. What's your reaction to these allegations?
I thought I'd heard it all and seen it all, but now we have a serial butt sniffer. So it is very disturbing, no question. In my experience, when you're talking about sex crimes, usually there's not one victim. When people have these deviant sexual fantasies, they'll often victimize multiple people. So I'm not surprised we're seeing this repeated pattern of conduct.
And I remember just a few years ago, a video went viral of this exact same suspect crouched down near a woman's behind, allegedly sniffing near it, at a Barnes & Noble in Burbank. I mean, what's your reaction to his MO and his repeated alleged offenses?
It's a problem. I'm sitting here in Los Angeles where I live and work, and there's a perception that, some of these crimes aren't taken seriously, or people that are criminals, there's a revolving door and they're out on the street. Obviously, this is disturbing. It's certainly not a murder or a rape by knife point, but this is still a problem when you have, women in California and in Los Angeles that are victimized, and there's people who are convicted sex offenders. Look, imagine just being at a Barnes and Noble, browsing through books, and someone, violates your personal space and your independence like that. It's a problem. So, hopefully this is someone that, gets the help that he needs, probably in state prison, but this really needs to stop. We can't have a serial, any type of criminal, especially a butt sniffer.
And I'm surprised too that these incidents have been happening so brazenly out in the public, especially in public stores. And as far as legal obligations retail stores have, what legal obligations do they have when it comes to observing suspicious behavior or sexually inappropriate behavior towards customers?
It's hard when you're a retail establishment because obviously you're not law enforcement, and oftentimes they're victims themselves, victims of retail theft. Again, it's a big problem. When you're talking about the law in this case, it's interesting because it's obviously not your typical case. So there was one instance, for instance, where the charges were dismissed apparently because the victim didn't want to pursue them. So that happens in sex crime cases where someone's been victimized and they honestly tell law enforcement, they tell police, they tell prosecutors, they tell detectives that, I can't go through this again and testify about this at a public trial. So cases are dismissed on that basis. When you're talking about the law, obviously this doesn't fall into your typical sexual assault cases. It doesn't appear to be any touching, right? That's usually required for an assault, right? Someone grabs a breast or buttocks, right? Or an indecent exposure case where it's the perp who's actually exposing himself, usually himself. Again, not happening there. Now, there are other things that you can obviously charge someone like this with stalking, loitering, trespassing, and those types of things. But again, because there's no touching and there's no exposure, it doesn't fall into your traditional lewd and lascivious, indecent exposure, sexual assault type cases or battery.
And what factors determine whether or not this type of act is treated as a misdemeanor or a more serious offense?
Yes, it can be a misdemeanor or felony. It's called a wobbler under California law. So usually the first offense, if it's not serious, will be a misdemeanor. It's punishable by up to 6 months in prison if it's an indecent exposure case. And it's that second one that would charge as a felony, and that carries a potential 3-year sentence if we're talking about indecent exposure. Obviously, look, here's someone who's a registered sex offender. Here's someone who's on parole for violating uh other crimes, right? Burglary and the whatnot. So this is someone that's going to receive enhanced sentences. He's not going to be charged with a misdemeanor. He's looking at parole violation, violation of his registration requirements, and of course, the new crime, which would be charged as a felony given this lengthy criminal history.
And going back to just the whole non contact aspect of this case, and it is no contact, right? But it's still very sexualized in a way, too. What challenges do prosecutors have when it comes to proving intent in a case like this, where maybe the defense can easily be like, oh, he was just in the same place at the same time. He wasn't doing anything sexually provoked or anything like that. But how difficult is it for prosecutors to have a case like this?
Well, it can be hard because, again, there's that gap in the law, right? The law doesn't usually consider the possibility that someone is going to sexually aroused without some sort of physical touch or exposing themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the situation where from the defense perspective, they can argue whatever they want, but this is where those prior instances come into play, right? We call them the prior bad acts, right? So typically they don't come into a case, but they can come in when they're going to show a motive, an MO, a lack of mistake, right? So if the defense argues, well, yeah, this is wrong place, wrong time, you happen to be bending down to pick up a book, well, then the prosecution would try to get in this prior conduct, saying, no, this is part of your pattern and practice of sexually assaulting these women for your own arousal. So I think a judge would allow that prior sexual behavior to come in. And there's actually statutory law in California that normally priors don't come in, but especially in cases of sex crimes, if someone has a history of sexual violence or sexual misconduct, that does come in to show that the most recent case for which they're being charged is in conformity with those prior acts.
And we do know one of the alleged incidents was caught on camera through a social media video. This one coming from years ago before these 2025 incidents happened. This one was back in 2023. But in terms of video evidence, and especially when you have a situation where a video does go viral on social media, does that have any legal weight to it? And how is that kind of evaluated in court? I know we use it for evidence and things of that sort, but is it always admissible, especially in a case like this?
I love video evidence, and it usually is admissible if there's a witness that can lay the foundation for its authenticity. And the reason I love video is video doesn't lie, right? People can lie, defendants lie all the time, but even victims, I'm not saying they can lie, but maybe they don't remember things, 100% accurately. But the video is always the best evidence, in my opinion, assuming it's clear, it captures the incident. And in today's day and age, really video has changed the game. I mean, it can be something like, obviously very different type of case, but George Floyd case might have been a very different case if it wasn't caught on video. I remember when I was a kid and, we caught Rodney King on video. I mean, it was so rare to see that type of police misconduct case caught on video. But now with cell phone cameras and video surveillance and rings and even my vehicle has videos, I mean, video has really changed the game in terms of how these cases are being prosecuted. So I absolutely love video evidence.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that too. I mean, especially like when we hear at body cam videos and we're going through it and we see the police report and then we see the body cam, and it really just adds a lot more color to what was just previously just in black and white. And to what extent does his history of similar prior incidents influence bail decisions or possible pretrial detention?
No question. So when you're looking at bail, you look, is someone a risk of flight or a danger to the community? Someone that keeps committing criminal actions As soon as they're out, when they're even on parole, right? Let's not forget parole is a second chance, right? You don't have to be paroled. The parole board says, listen, we're going to give you another opportunity to rejoin the general population and try to live a very different life. And if here's someone that, as soon as they're released or shortly thereafter, is committing more crimes, really committing the same crime from the judge, I'm thinking, well, this is someone who's a danger to the community. This is a danger to women who are just shopping, right? I mean, imagine what those poor victims are going through. So I think absolutely that prior criminal history, the fact that someone is on parole committing crimes and is unable to conform his conduct to the law would lead me to believe as a judge, hey, this is someone that really isn't deserving of bail.
And do you think he had been given second chances in the past just because the incidents weren't with contact or any of that sort, that they're just kind of deemed as no contact because it was just sniffing and maybe not as serious as a full-on sexual assault or rape or even murder, going just, to that full extent? But do you think that's why he kept getting these second chances that allowed him to go free to continue doing this?
I do. I think the nature of the conduct, because there was no touching, there was no groping, there was no exposure. Again, I'm not saying that this is justified in any way.
Right.
I think probably the previous prosecutors, judges, defense attorneys that handled those cases said, well, this isn't as serious as some of this other sexual misconduct. And of course, look, we know that there are some prosecutors who can be soft on these types of cases. Obviously, there's overcrowding in county jails and state prisons. So there is really this revolving door, unfortunately, when it comes to repeat criminals. And that's what we're seeing here. It's unfortunate. I don't know the answer. It's more of a public policy issue. But hopefully, again, this individual is removed from society, gets the help that he needs, because otherwise he's going to end up dying in prison if he can't stop doing this.
Yeah, or even worse, someone on the other end gets hurt because he just continues to escalate his behavior. First it's, butt sniffing, then it could be something worse down the line. We just will never know. Nima Rahmani, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight into this case. Before we sign you off, though, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think we covered everything. Thanks for having me, as always.
Online records as of this recording show Khalees Crowder is still in the custody of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, serving out his sentence. That does it for this episode. Be sure to check out more episodes on the Law and Crime YouTube channel. I'm Elizabeth Millner, and this has been Inside the Crime.